Now to a Fox News alert. As investigators search for a motive in the string of package scares, Congresswoman Maxine Waters is pinning the blame on the president.
I think the President of the United States should take responsibility for the kind of violence that we're seeing. I think the President of the United States has been dog whistling to his constituency. They're acting out what they believe the President wants them to. He, in his own way, really does do a lot to promote violence. Now they're trying to turn it on us.
He's promoting violence. Joining us now with her reactions, Michelle Malkin. She's the host of Michelle Malkin Investigates. Michelle, you remember her standing in front of the crowds at those rallies and saying, get in their face, and he's the one invoking violence?
That woman has a lot of gall. That woman does. And I started out my newspaper career in Los Angeles, and I've been covering her since the early 1990s. And her propensity for inciting violence goes all the way back to even before the LA riots. This is somebody who was essentially, dancing on the ashes of the LA riots and who excused that huge paroxysm of violence as a justifiable demonstration of quote-unquote civil unrest. That is actually the calmest I've ever seen her.
Well,
so what a kabuki theater pose that was.
On Gravity, Gravity TV.
Yes.
But I want you to hear her not calm.
Yes.
Flashback.
See anybody from that cabinet in a restaurant, in a department store, at a gasoline station, you push back on them and you tell them they're not welcome.
Do you trace the wave of activists getting up in the face of Republicans to that?
Well, I think that's the latest manifestation of it. I wrote a book in 2006 called Unhinged, Exposing Liberals Gone Wild, and I had a whole section on mugshots of inciters of violence. And the other thing I think that's important, too, is there is a phenomenon of blame righty, right, in the wake of all sorts of unsolved incidents of violence or domestic terrorism. And a lot of times what happens is, especially the liberal media that jumps the gun on these things, is always eating crow afterwards, and they never learn their lessons. Steve, yesterday you were talking about the anthrax attacks, which people have, there's this amnesia about exactly what happened. Do you guys remember that NPR had unjustly smeared the Traditional Values Coalition because a couple of the letters had been sent to Tom Daschle and Pat Leahy? And so there were people who actually verbalized and theorized that, well, since Traditional Values Coalition had opposed Leahy and Daschle wanting to eliminate the phrase "so help me God" from the senatorial oath, oh, well, they fit the profile of somebody who might be anthrax bomber attackers. And they issued a hollow apology, and those smears have happened for years, and people are sick of it.
How do they not see the hypocrisy?
Well, I think it is this sort of public amnesia and this forgetting of historical perspective. And even if in the last 10 years there have been many incidents of violence by complete nutballs that were blamed on Republicans and blamed on conservative media and people who espouse conservative principles. What really at issue here is a way to exploit these crises to suppress peaceful conservative free speech.
You mentioned your book Unhinged. I think the book before that was called Invasion, all about our immigration problem. As we look at this caravan heading toward the United States, it sounds like the president may try to use some executive order to essentially do the same thing to people trying to get asylum here as he did with the travel ban, which of course was immediately challenged in the courts. I've gotten so many email from people who said, don't call it a caravan. Call it an invasion.
Yes.
Is that fair?
Of course it is. It is a full-scale invasion by a hostile force, and it requires our president and our commander-in-chief to use any means necessary to protect our sovereignty. The reason that I called my book Invasion 16 years ago was because of Article 4, Section 4 of the Constitution. And people never talk about this anymore. The constitutional imperative to provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, the people who are already here. And if that means troops on the border, yes. The problem is, of course, that the troops, because of the Posse Comitatus Act, can only serve in an administrative or support capacity. It's really a Band-Aid. And the underlying solution, of course, is to finish the wall and to put more Border Patrol agents on the border. And ranchers and families have been calling for that for the 3 decades that I've been covering this issue.
Maybe they stopped getting in front of a judge and they just been turned around instead of this whole wait for the Justice Department, grab an ankle bracelet, and we'll see you when we see you. That's not working.
Yeah.
And Democrats know this.
Yes.
That's why they got to solve this problem.
That's right. And they have to keep stopping this idea that, oh, we can only solve it after the elections.
All right. Michelle Malkin, thanks so much.
Thanks,
You bet.
Michelle.